So we're going to start 7 minutes later than I intended, but it is what it is. So welcome everybody to the 2025 astrology forecast event. I think this will be about 2.5 hours. And you're welcome to stay for however long you want and then leave, and then you can watch the rest later. But I will say I have like a free gift for you at the end if you stay till the end. And then we'll also have time for Q&A at the end if you have any questions. So I'm Divine Harmony, and the next slide is actually about me for anybody who doesn't know me. This is my logo. That's me with makeup on. So I am Divine Harmony. And my real name is Harmony. People always ask. I've been studying astrology since 1996, so for 28 years now. It'll be 29 years in 2025, fall of 2025, because I began in the fall. I'm almost heading into my Saturn return for my studies of astrology, if you know your cycles. I've been writing about astrology, doing readings for 16 years, since 2008. I just had my Saturn opposition in 2023, and I started writing and teaching astrology at my Saturn return. And I've been teaching for 13, going on 14 years. And I just had my Jupiter return for teaching in 2023. So it's kind of interesting to see the two teacher planets have guided my journey through astrology, my own studies, and then my offering of it out to the world. I have a master's degree in depth psychology, a bachelor's in psychology. I'm an initiated priestess. I've studied shadow work extensively for 8 years, and I write a lot and I teach a lot. I'm also a mother and a mystic and a mythologist, and I really love my work and what I do. And for anybody who's new, my website's divineharmony.com. So I have my special guest, Randy Keller. Oh, it says Randall on his Zoom, but he goes by either. He is from the Cleveland Shaman, and he is the Urban Shaman. So I'm going to read a little bio first and then just share how I know Randy. So Randy Keller is a passionate explorer of consciousness and spiritual wisdom. He began his transformative journey after a near-death experience in 2011, leading to extraordinary synchronicities. In 2012, he embarked on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, inspiring him to found a men's meditation group in 2013 for healing and self-discovery. A pivotal moment came in 2016 with the Shaman's Walk workshop, leading to a year-long apprenticeship in shamanism and earning the title of Hakau-kuna. Did I pronounce that right?
Hakau-kuna.
Oh, sorry, Kunya. I pronounced kuna the way I would a Hawaiian word. In 2015, he met renowned astrologer Robert Hand, love Robert, sparking a passion for astrology. He completed his natal studies at the International Academy of Astrology in July of 2017 and continues his studies with well-known astrologers. So Randy and I first met. I actually had to ask him. I remember we communicate and chat about astrology a lot. And so I was like, gosh, when did that begin? And so he said he saw me on the Astrology Hub panel. I think it was a yearly astrology thing in 2021. And he gets a reading with different astrologers every year. And it's something I like to do too. It just keeps you learning from different people in your field. So we did a reading, and then we became, star brother, sister, friends, and we have a lot of fun talking about astrology together. And so he actually is going to join us for this event. And on another slide, I'll share with you what that will be. So thank you for being here, Randy. I really appreciate it, with his beautiful hawk behind him, spirit animal. So in this forecast overview, we're going to cover a lot of ground. So we're going to talk about how it's the year of the Hermit, the tarot card number 9. And when you add up 2, 0, 2, 5, goes to 9, it's a Hermit year. It's also the year of the wood snake as of the new moon in Aquarius later in January. So I'll be talking about that. Then Randy's going to give a talk on the mundane chart for January 1st, today. And I will actually take my slides down, let him put his up, and he's going to share with you. And then we'll come back to my PowerPoint, and then the rest of it will be my PowerPoint. where I'll be talking about a little bit about the inauguration chart and particularly the week leading up to it. And Randy will weave in with me throughout the rest of the talk as well. We'll talk about the nodes of the moon moving into Pisces and Virgo, the North Node and Pisces conjunctions, Pluto with Altair, fixed star Altair. I'll even mention Gene Key 41, Venus retrograde, major lunar standstill, the Saturn and Neptune ingress into Aries. We'll talk a little about the conjunction that's not till next year, but we get activation of it this year, so it's important. We'll talk about the first degree of Aries and the gates of love and human design and the gates of the vessel of love. The karmic completion degree of 29 Pisces, Chiron conjunct Aries, Jupiter into Cancer, conjunct Sirius, which I'm very excited for, Uranus into Gemini, Uranus sextile Neptune, and then I am going to talk like very briefly about the new course I have coming in February. It's called the Holy Grail, Becoming the Vessel. At the end, I have a free gift offer for you, some stuff about discounts on courses, reading potentials, and then we will end with a Q&A. And I always end, like I hang out until the questions are done. I mean, obviously I won't stay on for 6 hours, but so we will have that at the very end. So let's dive in and just start with the Hermit card. So when you add up in numerology the numbers and it goes down to the lowest number, you can superimpose that over the tarot cards. And this is the year of the Hermit. And it's interesting because there's a lot of Pisces energy that's also happening this year, Pisces activations, that is very much aligned with Hermit energy. I put some keywords here about the Hermit card: withdrawing from the outer world. A teacher who helps show us the way, could be an outer teacher, could also be an inner teacher. It's an awakening to the inner self, to whatever next level that is for you, because you probably, if you're here, have already had an awakening to the inner self. So it's like the next step on that path. It's a card of contemplation and self-awareness, taking responsibility for our lives, of meditation and retreat, and even reflection and introspection. Here is the Hermit card from the Rider-Waite Tarot. So the star that the Hermit is holding is the star Sirius. We'll be talking about that later. The golden yellow stick symbolizes ascension from earth to heaven, from the bottom of his feet to the top of his crown, and it's guided by Sirius. He holds the ascension stick with his left hand, the feminine. He faces the left side of the card, which is the feminine principle. His right hand, the masculine, holds the lamp up with the star shining at the level of his heart. And that's actually a big piece. Honestly, heart energy is really important this year. He wears a silver gray robe. It's not black, it's not white. It's the color in between. He's looking down, his eyes are closed, his gaze is turned inward. He is in a state of meditation and contemplation. 9 is a number of completion, so similar to the balsamic moon or dark of the moon. It's the end of the cycle, and all the pain and joy of that cycle can get crystallized into wisdom that we can then share with others, or that can inform our life in the future trajectory. So the Hermit guiding this year, the wisdom of the Hermit is that less is more, and that we actually want to focus less on getting and spending and doing, and more on the inner self, our inner needs, our inner world. And I'll tell you, the Pisces energy will support that. The wood snake also supports that. So the Chinese New Year happens at the new moon in Aquarius, which is January 29th. So we're not in the snake year yet, but we will be end of the month. And the snake is a symbol of wisdom and intuition and renewal. You know, the snake sheds its skin, evolution, transformation. But it's also connected to the mystery and introspection. And those are very similar keywords to Hermit, right? Wood is one of the 5 elements, and it has to do with growth, stability, creativity, balance. So we're growing in wisdom. We're stabilizing our intuition and psychic gifts. We're finding balance between the outer world and the inner world that we want to turn in towards and reflect on. So it's actually the Hermit card is the Virgo card, and the snake is either said to be Virgo or maybe Taurus. For me, Virgo feels appropriate. Either way, the snake is an earth animal. And this Virgoan energy of health and well-being and self-reflection and turning within. This is an amazing year for introspection and for the journey of the hermit. This is not to say there's not going to be a lot of things in the outer world that will, try and get our attention. But if we can always remember to turn within as we're dealing with things without, find that core strength and source within ourselves, we will be able to ride whatever waves come with a lot more mastery, a lot more stability, and a lot more wisdom that we're embodying and living. So now I'm going to hand it over to Randy, and he's going to do the New Year's mundane chart. So let me just stop sharing so you can share. And as you do that, I'm just going to check YouTube and make sure everything's okay over there. Yes. Okay, good. All right. So,
I will share in a second here.
okay. And everything looks good on on YouTube. Just makes me laugh. Ooh, okay. Here we go.
Let me know when that comes up.
It's weird. I'm seeing, oh, no. Okay. Yeah. There we go. It's definitely interesting sharing two different PowerPoints. I was like, wait, why is mine up? It's because I didn't minimize it from my own computer. I'm still talking about the Hermit card over there, but everything is definitely working. So let's just move forward.
So could someone acknowledge they see a slide change?
There's a delay, so I don't think they're going to see the slide change until see it. Somebody says up. Okay.
Okay,
You
great.
see,
All right.
Randy.
Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Um, my little segment, and this is actually, if I were to be honest with you, I'm going to condense a 2.5 hour presentation into about 15 minutes, which is fine. I will be recording this and making it available at a later date for anyone that wants to see the full presentation. But what I'm going to do is look at the perspective of the new year through the moment the clock ticked over to the new year. I'm casting a chart, and I'm going to progress forward to that for Washington, D.C. But this could be viewed as a world chart because literally this chart would look the same at most latitudes across the world. But let me know when that chart changes so that everybody can see the actual chart.
I'm not really clear what's happening because people are saying in the chat they can see things before I'm seeing it on the
Okay.
YouTube screen.
Okay.
So I'm just assuming, like, I think your voice and the what they see transmit at the same time. There's no delay there. So you
Okay,
can
perfect.
dive right in and they'll hear
Okay.
it.
All right. So what you're seeing is basically when the ball dropped last night. Or yeah, and at that moment, what you can do is you can cast a chart for that moment. And the way I look at this chart is this is the New Year's chart, and it's valid all the way till next year, and it's literally got that finite life to it. But from it, we can derive a lot of information about what we might anticipate the year to look like. The first thing I want to point out is that there's something in this chart known as a mystic rectangle. And visually, if you follow my cursor, what you're going to see is there's a line this way, and then a line across that, and that literally forms an X. And then around it, there is a rectangle, and that's called a mystic rectangle, and it's very significant in astrology. It's not necessarily very common. It does show up periodically, but it's one of the rarer aspects that we come across in astrology. But in the New Year's Day chart, I think it speaks to an important crossroads that we're at historically, with so many things that Harmony is going to talk about. There's synchronicity between this chart and the rest of the astrology for the year. But the important parts of this, and I'm going to jump forward, are that this chart, I'm going to use several little techniques to look at this rather quickly, but I'm going to look at the temperament of the year. I'm also going to look at the chart shape, which comes from an astrologer known as Mark Edmund Jones. Not a lot of people are necessarily familiar with Mark. He kind of specialized in psychological astrology. In fact, this technique of chart shape was really used to do psychological profiling of people he met with. And this chart has a very distinctive pattern to it. It's known as a locomotive, and I'll comment on that in a moment. I did mention the aspect of a mystic rectangle. The other big thing going on in this chart is that we have an important opposition to start the year, and that's between the Mars retrograde and Pluto. And Pluto happens to be also conjunct the moon, which is very significant, I think, for we the people in the upcoming year. The moon is a new moon. We're still in a new moon phase. It's also in the sign of Capricorn, which in traditional astrology is known as detriment. And I'll talk a little bit about how that may play out. And then finally, some of these other items, Harmony is going to be addressing, like the Jupiter square Saturn and the fact that Aquarius is now in Pluto. So let's just talk a little bit about the chart shape. A locomotive is a pattern where there's a planet out in the lead, leading all the other planets. And in this particular chart, that is Mercury. And Mercury finds itself in the third house in this chart, in the sign of Sagittarius. And just generally speaking, Mercury, as we know, is associated with the mental process. It's our cognition, it's communication. But in the mundane world, it also deals with the media, telecommunications, commerce, children. And the fact that it's in Sagittarius, to me, speaks to the fact that Sagittarius is all about finding meaning and seeking truth. And it feels like, with that at the lead position of the chart for the year, that this is going to be a year that's very philosophical in nature, one where we're really seeking meaning, where we're trying to get to the core of things. And when we get a little bit into the moon in a moment, I think you'll understand a bit more about that. In the mundane world, the sign that a planet finds itself in takes on a little different kind of meaning. We look at what the modality is, which is it's a mutable sign in Sagittarius, as well as fire, which is associated with things like fire and explosions, but it's also associated with our imagination and invention, and it has a very creative influence associated with it. And one of the things that I do a little differently, and I know that Harmony does this also, is I like to look at the Sabian symbols for the various planets on the first day of the year. And I found it interesting that Sagittarius is at 20 degrees and 8 minutes, and the Sabian symbol is a child and a dog wearing borrowed eyeglasses. And this particular commentary comes from Dane Rudyard, who I like to look at what he has to say about it. And he indicated that really what this is about is using the imagination and make-believe in anticipating higher stages of development. And literally, this whole chart speaks to this. It speaks to the fact that we're on the precipice of a huge transition, a huge transformational time, where we're going to be, almost faking it till we make it, which I think this symbol speaks to, is where we're putting someone else's glasses on if we have to give the appearance that we're in the game and we're understanding. And in fact, the note says that eyeglasses symbolize intellectual development. The chiefs of primitive tribes, in some instances, have sought to impress people by wearing spectacles without glass or Western hats simply because these objects seemed characteristic of a race of superior people. So there's something being said here about um, this new knowledge, the new things that we're going to be encountering in 2025, where there may be a time where we're having to imagine it. We're going to have to play some make-believe until it fully comes into our consciousness. Um, the other thing I want to talk about is the element of the temperament of the chart is sanguine, and sanguine deals with the blood. It deals with our relationships, our kindredness, and I think having the moon conjunct Aquarius really speaks to this because Aquarius is about the collective, about our community. And the fact that the chart itself has a sanguine temperament speaks to that relational matter that I think we're going to really want to focus on in 2025. I think community is going to be huge this year in getting through the journey that I think we're about to start. Um, I must make note of the fact that sanguine also is associated with the blood, and it can be associated with, events surrounding things that may involve bloodshed. And there are some indicators in this chart that there's a potentiality of some conflict, but there's also a whole lot in the chart that speak to a promise that we're ascending a mountain and we're on a pilgrimage this year. So the moon is probably the most important element of this, and the moon finds itself in Capricorn in the fourth house, which, for those that may not be aware of it, in mundane astrology, the moon deals with the people, the populace, the masses, the popular opinion. And being in the fourth house, it's a very auspicious placement because this is the house of the moon. This is where it's most comfortable. It also in mundane astrology deals with the actual physical land, the structures of the nation, our crops. Um, it also can have an influence on the nation's weather. And all of these things I think are going to be in play. And ironically, a lot of them are. All you have to do is look around the last few weeks. We have this mysterious fog now going on, which I'm sure Harmony will probably comment on because there is a lot of Neptunian energy involved this year. Um, I'm going to jump forward a few slides, and I apologize because I'm going to move rather quickly, and some of these things I won't fully address. But the key factors about the moon this year, which is us, the people, is it's a new moon, and so I think that gives us a very visionary stance this year. The dark moon is things are unseen, and it really is related to the collective unconscious, where we have to focus within. There's a connection to the ancient collective memories. Um, Harmony talked a little bit about the Hermit card. The new moon would be associated with the Fool card, where we're stepping off to trails that are unknown. We're riding the tide of new ideas, and there's a window to the subconscious opening up. So this is something I think that is very important about our position this year as we enter the new year. This moon is also out of bounds. For those who may not be familiar with out of bounds is basically deals with the declination that a planet is at a given moment. The sun will travel 23 degrees, 26 degrees north and south. And at times, one of the planets, including the moon, can get outside of that declination. We find on the New Year's Day chart that the moon is outside of that, and that's a condition known as out of bounds. And basically, the way I'm summarizing this is that's again a very visionary type of alignment where it has almost a Uranian nature to it when the moon is out of bounds, where we're hearing our own drummer, We're feeling a bit maverick in nature, and we're not necessarily keen on following the rules. There's almost a rebellious nature to an out of bounds moons. And there's an ability to also have almost a super consciousness where we're seeing beyond where we would normally see. Another factor in play here is this moon is in detriment, and this is part of traditional astrology. I would say what that is speaking to is the fact that it's indicating that we may have some uncomfortableness with where we're going to be in this new year. We won't be able to just like sail through. There might be some difficulty in this quest as we enter the new year as a people. And also, the moon is very auspiciously placed. It's in that fourth house. So I just want to focus on this slide, and then I'm going to jump forward because I don't want to go too long with this. But the Capricorn moon is at 26 degrees and 43 minutes. And in the Sabian symbols, I found this to be fascinating. The theme of this degree is pilgrims climbing a steep steps leading to a mountain shrine. And this is what I've entitled my full presentation, A Mountain Pilgrimage. And the reason I've done this is it really speaks to the fact that we're probably entering a path that is going to feel almost like we're returning to the origins of our country, where we were pilgrims. And here we find ourselves again in 2025 in the situation where we're aiming towards, if you think of the mountaintop, a mountain voyage can be treacherous. There's cliffs, it can be a little scary at times, but we're shooting for something higher. And in this particular vision that Elsie Wheeler had, and that's a whole new discussion, she's the source of the Sabian symbols, working with Mark Jones in conjunction with Mark Jones. But what we're seeking is some higher understanding, some higher ground, if you will, some higher consciousness. And one of the things that confirms this is I'm going to jump through, well, maybe I'll go back one slide. So if we pull the moon energy together, and then I want to jump forward to the mystic rectangle, what we're looking at is considering this through the lens of mundane astrology. What I've written here is the moon signifies the people, the masses, the population as a whole. And with the moon being in this phase, it seems the people are going to find themselves in this position of needing to rely on their visionary instincts, needing to tap into that collective consciousness. And we're looking forward to a new beginning. That's the new moon. It's a new beginning with hope and possibilities. Being out of bounds, it's going to feel a lot like we're stepping into an unknown place. There's going to be this overriding energy of almost revolutionary, where we're prepared to, for something different, for the battle for the people. And this kind of fits in with Pluto and Aquarius, where we're talking about power to the people, versus when Pluto was in Capricorn, it was more power to the man, right? And so the people are taking matters into their own hands, it feels like, in this chart, and they're hearing their own drummer, and there's an empowerment that's taking place. And then finally, it's not going to be done without some resistance because it is in detriment. All right, let me quickly jump through a few slides here. And once we get to it, hopefully people can see the slide that says mystic rectangle.
Yeah, I think it is working.
Okay, great. So this is really important, and I'll finish here. This represents this inner X that you see on the chart up on the screen. It represents some tension, some underlying thing going on for the year that we have to pay attention to. And I'm going to shoot straight with you. There's some real positives here, and there's some things that may be very challenging. The fact that we have Mars in the 10th house, which in mundane astrology kind of represents the government, those that are running things, in direct opposition to the people, I found very, very important. And the fact that we have Pluto also here with the moon indicates that we have potentially some real large tension going on between potentially Mars can be a lot of things, but Mars, and you'll see on my slide, Mars can be soldiers, it can be war, it can be agitators, it can be rebels, it can be epidemics, it can be fevers. So there's a range of things that we're potentially looking at here. But what it feels like as I lean into this is that we've got the potential for something going on either through an epidemic of some type or some criminal operation that is opposing the desires of the people to move forward into this new paradigm, which is the Pluto in Aquarius. And, this is the Pluto energy speaks to a desire to transform, to regenerate, and to take on and be empowered. And so I just think that we need to be mindful that we could encounter some resistance as a people as we do this mountain pilgrimage and we try to ascend to what I'd call a higher level of consciousness. And that's indicated, I believe, here with this tense aspect between Mars and the moon in the New Year's Day chart. The other thing that's interesting is the other side of the tension is represented by the nodes of the moon. And this doesn't always occur in the mystic rectangle. Sometimes it does, but naturally the nodes of the moon are always in opposition, but they're not always part of a mystic rectangle. And so what I think this speaks to is the fact that the nodes of the moon, as you may or may not know, deal with our karmic past, patterns that we have to rid ourselves of or we're trying to let go of. And the North Node indicates a destiny point, something that we're striving for, seeking to accomplish. And it's not always an easy task because it's less familiar. And the thing that I found fascinating is that we've got Neptune conjunct the North Node in this New Year's Day chart. And so what that speaks to, I think, is the same thing that this symbol for the moon is speaking to is some desire to ascend higher, to seek greater spiritual understanding, to transcend the past, and the past being over here in the 12th house. So the 12th house deals with secret operations, things that have been going on behind the scenes, criminal groups, potentially, things that have been going on that we weren't privy to, that have actually had a damaging effect upon the people and our prosperity and our ability to fully realize our true potential. And so it's going to be, I think, in releasing some of these issues here and coming to a better understanding of our destiny point over here in the 6th house that we resolve this tension. The nice thing is, in a mystical rectangle, you have trines and you have sextiles, and those are favorable aspects, and those are really where we get relief from the tension. And so just quickly, I would just quickly give you a delineation here saying that Mars can also be, it doesn't have to be just the negative side of things. Mars is our ability to act, our ability to be aggressive or assertive. And so I think what this is speaking to is that in this outer rectangle, there exists the ability of us to take the actions to, for instance, free ourselves of those patterns, of the things that have been holding us back. Also taking the actions that we need to transcend and to realize our full spiritual potential as a people. And Neptune is in a favorable aspect to the moon, so bringing the vision to the people, allowing us to see the things that we need to travel this pilgrim's path to the mountaintop. And the South Node in a favorable aspect to the moon gives us an understanding of what those things are. We're clearly seeing it's coming to us clearly of what it is we need to rid ourselves of and what it is we need to ascend to. So I know that was really quick. I'm trying to consolidate a 2.5 hour presentation, but I wanted to give you some highlights of really how simple just casting a chart for the first moment of the year can bring all kinds of information to light. And as Harmony gets into the meat of the discussion today, I think you'll see that it all fits together. It all kind of speaks to the same topic, that we're in this very Neptunian time. The other nice thing about the moon on New Year's Day is it has a trine from Uranus, and it also has that nice sextile from Neptune and Pluto. So all the outer planets are speaking to the people as we start this new year. So I'll stop there, and I know that was quick, but hopefully it was of some value.
Yeah, so, and I just want to say, so I really love Randy's mundane astrology. Like, we've had so many chats about things. And for example, we were chatting about last year's New Year's chart and how in the chart he saw something around children and pneumonia and lungs, like lung things. And I'm a mother. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's been a lot of things that have gone around with kids, especially and walking pneumonia, RSV, lung stuff recently, especially in the last, I think, couple months. And it's just, you have to understand mundane astrology, it is forecasting. It's a forecasting technique, and it is often very black and white. So it's like bad things might happen, good things might happen. Like it's the whole arc of it is to try and predict what's coming. Whereas the type of astrology I tend to focus on is more psychological and spiritual. Like, how do we work with the energies? There's light and shadow, and how do we show up for it? So mundane does have more of a, hey, this might happen, which can be, I think somebody made a comment in the chat, that sounds ominous. And it's like, well, it's not meant to be ominous, but it's meant to bring awareness to the potentials on a practical, mundane level. The rest of this talk, I'll be very much focusing on the spiritual, the psychological, and Randy was talking very much about the people and the visionary potential for transformation of consciousness. And so he weaved that in as well. But there are some very practical pieces that a mundane astrologer would see, like notably, Mars opposite that, Moon, Pluto. Mars is the god of war, anger, drive. Pluto is the god of death and rebirth. And then you've got the moon, the people. And it's like, so there's certain things there that you can read. So one thing I just wanted to say is, actually, you know what? I'm not going to say anything more because we're going to get to some of the stuff in the future slides. So, all right, we are now, let me just make sure everything looks like it is. And there are people in chat saying they'd love to hear the full thing. So he's going to do the full presentation in a couple of weeks for an event he's been invited to. But I've asked him if he wants to, if he can, record the full thing. And then I said I'd post it on my YouTube channel, or he could make his own channel and post it there. I can send it out. I can post it on my website. So he has a whole 2.5 hour presentation of his own that he had already put together that he was offering. And I just wanted him to come in and share some of his wisdom with you. So, and his website is The Cleveland Shaman. And I'll remind you of that at the end of this talk as well. So let's dive into the inauguration chart. So I know not everybody here that's live or even listening later is in the United States, but we both live in the United States. And I wanted to just bring a little presence to this. I talked about this in the Lunar Gate call that's up, the lunar horoscopes, the January forecast that's posted, because essentially January 13th through the 20th, and even the 23rd, 24th, can be quite volatile. We essentially have a full moon in Cancer on the 13th, conjunct Mars retrograde square Aries, the goddess of discord and chaos. And then the next 2 days, 14th and 15th, the sun squares Aries, opposes Mars. And then on the 20th, as you can see here, this is the inauguration chart set for 12 noon, which is typically when inauguration is. Mars is precisely square Aries at 24:24, and technically it hits exact 7 minutes before, but Aries moves really slowly. Mars does too when he's retrograde, so they energize their degree aspect. So this can, Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos. Mars is the god of war. It can be a time that's emotionally volatile, emotionally aggressive, emotionally subjective, not a great combination. So we want to, on a personal level, all be aware of our emotions and where we're being run by our subjective experience. We want to have healthy practices for dealing with anger and rage. If we stuff it, it can get explosive. If we explode in it without thinking, it can set things into motion that we maybe wish we hadn't done. And so, these days can be argumentative, combative, accident prone. Wars around the planet can get inflamed in this kind of astrology. Emotions are high. It can be a tense time. So the medicine is to be conscious, right? And bring awareness to it as opposed to just get caught by it unexpected. So I'm going to just kind of complete with that. So now we're going to launch into the various different things that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about them in the order of which they start. I mean, some of them will happen multiple times in a year, but the first one, so we'll go kind of in that sort of order. So the nodes are moving into Pisces and Virgo. And they actually shift January 29th for the mean nodes. For the true, they're January 11th. There's two variations of the nodes. The true is erratic and constantly goes retrograde and direct. And it actually is a bit messy when you're tracking yearly or even weekly, monthly astrology. So I use the mean node when I'm teaching and writing, but I'll look at the true and natal charts. So I'm focusing on the mean node for dates here. We essentially have the North Node crossing from the Omega point to the Alpha point, from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries. Typically, planets move the other direction. They go forward from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries, but the nodes are always moving retrograde, similar to the ages. The ages, we're in the age of Aquarius, for example, those move backwards as well. And so this is crossing over what's called the Aries point, and I have a slide on that later, but the Aries point is 0 Aries, but also the other equinox solstice points. So 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, 0 Capricorn. They are the turning points of the seasons, and they correlate, especially with significant transits over them, with huge world events, things that happen on the world stage, not just like personal, but it can also be very personal. So the North Node in Pisces, Pisces is a mystical sign. It's the last sign. It has to do with spirituality and intuition and dreams, and it's empathic and compassionate. It's the sign of the higher heart, divine love, unconditional love. It is said to be the sign that is the closest to the divine. Now, it has a shadow side. It can also be like not here on Earth, floating up and out, not dealing with reality. But it is the North Node, and the North Node is where our evolution and growth is. It's where we're being pushed out of the nest, and we have to figure out how to fly while falling down. And the growth edge this year and in the next year and a half, because that's how long the nodes are in signs, has to do with spirituality and opening our eyes to what lies beyond the five senses, what we can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. South Node in Virgo tends to highlight the karma and the things we're stuck in. It has gifts. It can be things that are easy, but it's also like we stay there because it's so easy. And then the North Node is like discomfort because it's not familiar. It's not, territory we've figured out already. South Node in Virgo is amazing when it comes to being in the body, being grounded, showing up, doing the work. But the shadow of it is we can be so stuck in the 3D world, being critical and judgmental and nitpicky, that we miss the possibilities that you can only realize when you go up into the Pisces transcendent realms. Ultimately, we want to bridge this divide. You don't want to just check out of your body and go into spirit. But we don't want to only be in the body and be like disconnected from spirit, our emotions, our dreams, our visions. From a Western astrological perspective, it's called the, North Node is seemingly more positive, South Node is more negative. in Vedic, both of them actually can be intense. So it's the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. And then we actually have Neptune conjunct the North Node February 22nd, and Saturn conjunct the North Node April 14th. And this is a harbinger, actually, of Saturn and Neptune, actually the other way, Neptune and then Saturn moving into Aries, making their way towards conjunction, which will be exact in 2026. And there's slides on that later. Right now, just focusing on the Pisces. But this is the end of the previous 36-year cycle of Saturn and Neptune. They were last conjunct in 1989. So they're actually finishing up the end of their 36-year journey together. And the end of any cycle is all about completing, releasing, letting things go, dealing with whatever's unresolved, coming to the end of the journey so that we can start anew. So it's a really beautiful time to be working with completion of things, and mystically, spiritually, emotionally. Do you have anything you want to chime in? You don't have to. You can thumbs up me if you do. I just don't want to like.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. So that's that's like setting the tone. And for me, the Hermit card and then the snake and this introspection and this transformation and this mystical primordial wisdom energy. And then you've just got like opening the year with all this Pisces. It's like, wow, but we have to understand, I'm Pisces rising, Pisces moon, Neptune on the midheaven. I'm very Piscean. And when Neptune moved into Pisces back in 2011, I remember being so excited. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I didn't really think this, but I jokingly was like, maybe I'll get enlightened, or, I was just expecting all these like spiritual, amazing things. And guess what? They did happen. And then also a lot of other stuff, like where I had to take off rose-colored glasses. I had to see truth clearly. I had to deal with illusions and delusions and deceptions, self-imposed and imposed by others. So everything has a light and shadow. And it's important to understand that.
Harmony, I would
Yeah.
say that the big thing about this particular nodal axis is that what I think it's speaking to is the need for us to not have everything so clearly defined.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have a tendency to want to know all the whys
Yeah.
and have it laid out and organized. And sometimes that just doesn't work. It's going to be about taking that step and trusting and believing that the answer's out there. I lead a men's meditation group, and one of the things I frequently tell them is the beginning of knowing is recognizing you don't know.
Yes.
And so the Virgo to Pisces transition is Virgo is a very, very powerful and needed energy where we're discerning and we pay attention to the details and we really try to have everything organized and making sense. But what this is speaking to is releasing the tendency to get too bogged down in that and moving more towards accepting that there are mysteries and that by moving more in that direction, we're going to get more insight.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's great. It's like not just seeing the trees, but seeing the whole forest, not being myopic.
Yeah.
So let's see, I think something just happened to my deck. Hold on, I have to move this. There we go. Oh, this was just an image I had put for the nodes, but we talked about everything already. So now Pluto will be conjunct Altair. And so Altair is a fixed star. The next slide, I show you a visual of it, but these are the dates. So just first of all, put these on your calendar. February 3rd, August 13th, which incidentally is the day Jupiter is conjunct Sirius. So 5 stars around August 13th. And then December 10th. And Pluto is also entering in Gene Key 41. If you're into the Gene Keys, it's the prime emanation. So here is Aquila Altair is the fixed star, and these are the three birds. These are the celestial birds that fly above the waters of primordial creation. I probably should have put a picture of Stellarium where you could see the waters below and the birds above, but essentially the sun moves on the ecliptic. The sun will never actually align with this star, but it will energetically by angle. And today we're told Aquila is the eagle, but there are star descriptions that say this bird was a dark bird. So if it was an eagle, it was a golden eagle. And there's ancient texts and things that say this actually was a vulture. And if you go way back, all three of these were vultures: Lyra, Aquila, and Cygnus, even, who's today we see as a swan. And so Aquila was the flying vulture, the one that's going up and ascending, and it was just to the left of the Milky Way after passing the galactic center. And then Lyra is the one that's the swooping or descending or falling vulture, and it's the one to the right of the Milky Way just before crossing past the galactic center. So Lyra is like swooping down into the galactic center, and then Aquila is coming back out of it. And the galactic center is the center of our Milky Way galaxy. So we have Pluto aligning with this fixed star that Solar Fire says is about being exploratory and bold. And it's a star that's got a quest for freedom, and we want to take action. And it's the bird of Jove or Zeus in some of the myths. There is also potentially an aggressive, reckless energy to this star. And actually, in this area of the sky, there's a few stars that are connected to justice, liberty, and freedom, qualities that, if you're an American, you often hear are associated with the beginning of your country. And as this is the flying ascending vulture past the galactic center, it's like a rebirth point, a starting a new point. And interestingly, the United States Inauguration Chart has the Sun conjunct Altair. January 20th is Sun conjunct Altair and into the next day. And the eagle is our, image. The gene key, and I don't teach gene keys, but I just wanted to put a little placeholder so you understand. The gene key 41 is seen as the prime emanation, the beginning, and it's connected to origin. So we have like this new beginning energy. And if you look at the Sabian symbol for 2 Aquarius, which is where Pluto will be headed, and then 3 Aquarius, which is technically where the star is now because it's at 2 degrees 7 minutes. The 2 Aquarius one talks about an unexpected thunderstorm and nature's challenges. But then 3 Aquarius talks about a deserter from the Navy. And it has to do with an individual self-realization through a crucial repudiation of collective status, which has now become unbearable. So where are we holding on to what we've all been told we're supposed to do as a humanity, as a person of our country, as a person of our religion, as our gender, as our age, whatever it is, all these ideas of what we have to do. And then, the alignment here can be about deserting what has become unbearable, and speaks to that energy that Randy saw in the chart of the visionary capacity for the people. And I really feel that Pluto and Aquarius with Altair is a part of that story. Now, Venus will be retrograde, and my new course that I don't have a lot to say about it at the end, but I'll have a couple sentences, is actually timed with Venus retrograde. So the important pieces to understand is Venus will station retrograde March 1st at 10 degrees 50 minutes Aries, and then she'll go direct again April 12th at 24:37 Pisces. And the big events, just to be aware of right now, we'll be deep diving with this journey in the class. She will, of course, cross the Aries point because she stations retrograde at Aries and goes back to Pisces. So she's going to go over the Aries point 3 times. Activation, 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 this important point for the world and this turning point, rebirth point. She'll be conjunct the North Node 3 times, North Node of Destiny. She'll be conjunct Neptune 3 times, the higher heart and planet of compassion and altruism and divine love. and she'll be conjunct Saturn 3 times. And he's the Lord of karma and the father of time. Venus retrograde is a time to reevaluate, especially relationships, Venusian things, finances, our self-worth and self-love. Also, reevaluating how do we activate and have agency in our lives, Aries, what she stations retrograde in, but also how do we surrender and allow, which is Pisces. Aries is the ultimate yang, and Pisces is the ultimate yin. And they can often feel like they are opposed, but they really are two sides of the same yin yang, and they complete each other. It can even be seen as the Ouroboros point, where the snake eating its tail, the tail and the head that's eating the tail are that turning point of the last degree of Pisces to the first degree of Aries. So I'll have a lot more to say on that throughout the course, but this is a time to be aware that this goddess of love and beauty will be heading into the underworld, and there'll be underworld journeys around our worth, our value, our relationships, dealing with things from the past, etc. Do you have anything to say? No, okay, it's okay. I don't want to I don't want to like miss your signal, so
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the major lunar standstill, this connects to something Randy was talking about in the mundane chart for the first day of the year. He said the moon was out of bounds. And that has to do with the major lunar standstill cycle. So this is a 19-year cycle. Every 19 years, the moon goes the most out of bounds it possibly can. We've been in it actually in 2024, and the peak of it is actually March 22nd, 2025. It's the moment that the moon is at the most max out of bounds. The moon will be in Capricorn, and it's, of course, at the spring equinox. On the first day of the year today, the moon was at like 25 degrees declination. Once it gets past 23 degrees, 24 minutes, it is out of bounds. But on March 22nd, it's actually going to get to 28. So it's going to be at the most out of bounds possible. I found this image online from AstroCal. I've actually written for their calendar diary before, and they just had this exceptional image of, you can see the moon goes really out of bounds. And it shows the two signs that the moon is typically going to be in. Sometimes it can be the edge of a Gemini and Sagittarius. And so I actually have an entire 2 hours, maybe it's an hour and a half, whatever, interview just on the major lunar standstill cycle. And at the end of this, I'll put that in the chat. I'll probably put all the links I put in the chat in the bottom of this video when the video is done too. So you can either find it there, or if you're here live, I'll put things in the chat later. But the moon out of bounds, emotions go beyond what's even normal. Like when a planet's out of bounds, it's going beyond even what the sun can reach. And so the moon, emotions, the feminine, women, the tides can all get epic. And we will have this happen at spring equinox, where there's already a lot of other stuff happening. Venus retrograde, Neptune's going to move into Aries at the end of March, 8 days after this. So if you're in Scotland at the Clanish Standing Stones, which is, this is an image of them. I was just there this past summer. You can see the moon just barely rise above the horizon of the earth, walk upon the earth, never really go into the sky, and then go back down pretty quickly within a matter of hours. So the moon's only up for like 3 hours or something. So the moon will magnify emotions this year, being out of bounds. So again, emotional work is key. This is such a magical place if you haven't been there. It's like, whew, the Clanish Standing Stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland. It's pretty phenomenal. I talk about it more in the video, so you can also find that video on my YouTube channel when you're done watching this. It's somewhere listed on my channel. So now Neptune and Saturn into Aries. Neptune moves into Aries March 30th, Saturn May 24th. And here's a picture of Saturn, a picture of Neptune. Even just seeing them kind of evokes a specific energy, you know, as Saturn's very kind of earth colors, these neutral tones, brownish, cream, and then you've got this like popping blue Neptune planet. And true enough, in embodied astrology, which is a class I teach about working with the planets and the signs in a somatic way, Saturn is your root chakra. It's what grounds you into the earth. Be here now. Deal with the day-to-day things of life. Very Saturn, you know? He's the dweller at the threshold esoterically, and you do not get past him until you face your fears and deal with your karma. Neptune is the higher heart, not just the personal heart, but the higher heart by the thymus, which takes the personal heart's capacity for love to a higher level. But Neptune also has association with the crown because Jupiter rules the crown and Jupiter and Neptune rule Pisces. So love and the spirit connection are very Neptunian, and Saturn's all about practical, tangible, reality, hard work. They both are going to cross the Aries point. And if you can think back to 2011, it was March 11th, 2011. Anybody know what happened? Uranus crossed from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries, and there was an earthquake in Japan, a tsunami, and a nuclear meltdown. That was all from Uranus crossing over the Aries point. So that's an example of the Aries points being very important on a global level. So that was Uranus. Uranus rules shocks and earthquakes. This is Neptune. Neptune rules water and emotions and the unconscious, the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, just simple water that we drink. Neptune is also, though, confusion, illusion, deception, along with spirituality and mysticism. Aries is also war and will that can be egoic and combative energy. Aries is, you know, has positive sides and shadow sides, just like everything else. In its highest, Saturn is about that mastery, that embodiment and grounding, and Neptune is the spirituality, mysticism, compassion energy. So we can put the two together and become the embodiments of love, or start a new cycle where we lay a very solid foundation that we will grow in the next 34, 35 years, build on to come, that takes spiritual or creative or mystical things and brings them into form. I mean, there's many ways to play with this. I know you probably have something you want to say because this was in your original PowerPoint.
Yeah. So this is very auspicious. This interestingly, this particular alignment, when it has occurred in the past, has really spoken to some kind of upheaval in political structures. Um, Specifically, interestingly, it's always, not always, but frequently dealt with communist countries. I think 1989 was the last, maybe I can quickly look at my notes here, when
It
this
is.
occurred. Yeah, 1989 to 1990. And it was marked by some huge transformation and change in political systems, economic systems. Um, Old structures get dismantled, new ones come in, and so this really is something we, I think, need to be paying attention to. It's historically pointed towards some major restructuring around those items.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, because the actual conjunction, I think I have another slide about actually, it's the next one. Here we go. Saturn conjunct Neptune. The actual conjunction is February 20th, 2026, but it gets really close this year. Jupiter will trigger it after moving into Cancer June 15th through the 18th. So that's an important time to pay attention. And July 4th through the 13th, both, I think, I can't remember who stations first. I think it goes Neptune and then Saturn station retrograde, but I could have them backwards. And they station within 14 minutes of each other. So not even a degree away, not even a half a degree away, not even a quarter of a degree away. It's 14 minutes. So it's 1 minute less than a quarter of a degree away. So it's very much there. The one that happened previously was 1989, and there were 3 conjunctions. There was March 3rd, June 24th, which is my birthday, and November 13th. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and think about what happened when I turned 11. But that will be for another day. So, this can be a very powerful transit, but we are still in the ending of the previous cycle that was seeded in 89. And there's something that needs to be completed, brought to fruition, karmically put to rest. I don't even know the different ways you want to conceive of it. For me, Saturn, as I said, is the root chakra, is a planet of get real, but also karma and consequences for when we're not getting real and we're out of integrity. Neptune is the higher heart and the crown, spiritual, ethereal, but it's the opposite of grounded Saturn. It can be escapist, addictive, not wanting to be present in this now moment and deal with reality. So when you put Saturn and Neptune together, it can sometimes feel like oil and water, and dissolution of structures, foundations, things we thought would always endure can be the precursor to the new form that wants to come through, especially this conjunction when it happens in 26. We'll be at the first degree. It'll be at 0 degrees. I think it was 45 minutes. And it's like literally right smack on the Aries point. It's a massive new beginning. It's not just a new beginning of a 36-year cycle, 34, 35, 36, it ranges. But it's a new beginning at the Aries point, at the beginning of the tropical zodiac, which implies an even bigger new beginning than we would maybe think just without that kind of information there. So also, incidentally, the United States, I see the bottom of our chart is 1 to 2 degrees of Aries. So Saturn and Neptune will be heading to cross into our 4th house of home and family. The last time Neptune did that was actually at the Civil War, not predicting a civil war, but just to bring some context into the last transit. Who has a very good article on this is Maurice. Oh my gosh, I know his last name.
Fernandez.
Thank you. I was like, I know his last name. It's just one of those moments where my mind goes blank. He's a very good article talking about all the historical, political pieces. So I recommend, I don't remember the title of the article, but I think if you just Google his name and then Google Saturn conjunct Neptune Civil War.
So you can see the literalness of this sometimes. So astrology can be very literal. This was when the Berlin Wall collapsed.
Mm,
It,
yes.
it was taken down in, I think, November of 1989.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. How interesting. That was the
literally,
third
literally the
conjunction.
dissolving of a structure.
Yes. Yes. And one of the ways I even had, what did I put? I put here, put the two together. Saturn can harden emotions, harden the heart, bear down and resist change. This is the shadow side. Neptune can create decay and mold in the foundations of Saturn, bringing a sea change, unconscious material up. So that the dissolution of foundations or the falling down of the wall, which maybe people thought was going to stay up forever, things that are unsustainable, no longer working, Neptune will take out in a giant wave like the ocean. What remains withstood the storm. So, it's a very interesting transit, and it's not exact till 2026, but it does get close and get triggered this year. So that's why I put a slide on it. Jupiter will square Saturn one more time, and that ties into the trigger of the Saturn-Neptune, because the previous slide I said the 15th through the 18th of June, Jupiter squares Saturn and then Neptune. And then 3 weeks later, Neptune stations retrograde, and then 2 weeks later, or less than 2 weeks, Saturn stations retrograde. What's interesting about this Jupiter-Saturn square We've had three. The first one was August 19th, 2024. Second is Christmas Eve. Um, it was interesting because the week of, if you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, because Hanukkah was the next day, or if you celebrate other traditions, a lot of times around that solstice, there's many different celebrations of the return of the light. And there was heavy astrology that week. It was a lot of Saturn astrology. And I heard of people having difficulty with family members. I heard of people getting sick and not being able to enjoy the holiday. I heard of people having issues with transportation and not getting to where they wanted to go. Saturn, you know, he has a lot of great qualities, but he can also be a bit of a bummer sometimes. And on the holidays, I can always see when I prepare the forecast, I'm like, oh yeah, Christmas might be a little crazy this year. Oh, this is going to be a wonderful Christmas. Like Thanksgiving too, all the different holidays, I pay attention. So this last one is actually going to be at Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. The previous two were Jupiter Gemini, Saturn Pisces. So those Jupiter Saturn squares were more tension between what do we think and what do we believe, Gemini Pisces. Are we open-minded and willing to understand things we can't see and we can't prove, Pisces? The push-pull between blind belief, Pisces, and logical, rational understanding, you know, more Gemini air sign. This square actually will be Cancer Aries. So it's going to have a different energetic, a different signature, and notably it's going to be triggering Saturn and Neptune. So that's going to be tying in. That can be the push-pull between family and what's expected of you, Cancer, and what you want and you need, Aries. And, you know, it can maybe have a bit more of a combative energy that's like fiery because of the cardinality of the planets, you know, of the signs. It's more cardinals like in your face, you know, mutables kind of like trying to transition and end. So it might kind of pack a punch a little more than the other two. Do you have anything you want to say about it? I can't hear you. Oh no, did we lose your volume?
Sorry, no, I
Oh,
was muted.
oh.
I was
There
I was looking through my slide deck. I had something on this, but no, I think that addresses it. It's really a push-pull between this, you know, the in its most basic sense, this square is about our desire to grow and be optimistic and expand versus this energy that's saying, you know, to be fearful and resistant and to stay in our lane. And
Mm,
when those things get in tension, you know, they have to find their resolution, and it's always someplace in between, right? We need to have optimism, but we also have to have a reality check at times. So
yeah.
I think that's what this speaks to is really that push pull.
Yeah, yeah. And also I call Jupiter the Santa Claus planet. So he's like the
Yeah.
gift giver and oh yeah, go for it. You know, and Saturn's the taskmaster. He comes and whaps you on the hand, goes, do your homework, you know, go to sleep, you know, whatever. Do
I get a
well,
picture of a guy yelling to get off my lawn, you know.
get off my lawn. Yeah. You know, also in the greater Jupiter Saturn cycle, so we had the Jupiter Saturn conjunction December solstice of 2020. And this is the opening square of that cycle that began. So something was seated back then, and it was at the first degree of Aquarius. In my Age of Aquarius masterclass, I talk about it a lot, but it was a really key point in the Age of Aquarius energies coming more into form on Earth. And now we're at the opening square. It's like, you know, we have a new moon and you have the full moon. It's the opposite part of the cycle. But the first quarter square of the moon is a checkpoint about like, well, what did you set in motion at that new moon? Where are you at with it now? Is it working? Do you need to make adjustments? Like there's that tension of Jupiter square Saturn checkpointing what we set into motion around the Age of Aquarius energies back then, wherever Aquarius is in your chart, you know, personally. So there's also, you know, that to kind of think about. So the first degree of Aries, there's a lot of activation of this because the North Node is there. I don't think it's, when does it get there? This, I actually meant to put this down. It's not there today, but it will be about there very shortly because today the North Node's at 127. So it looks like it'll hit 101 on January 9th and then back into 058 January 10th. So the North Node is going to be there. Saturn's ingressing there. Neptune's ingressing there. Next year, we'll have Saturn conjunct Neptune there. So the first degree of Aries is the alpha point in tropical astrology. It is the beginning. It corresponds with the day of the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. If you live in the southern hemisphere, it's your fall equinox. But it's that moment, that tipping point moment where it's not the sun at winter, where you've got really short days and, you know, longer days of no light and cold and winter. But it's also not max summer. It's that halfway tipping point. Spring equinox is where we spring into the light half of the year, whereas fall equinox is where we fall into the dark half of the year. And so the first degree of Aries has this rebirth energy, this resurrection energy. And the Sabian symbol for it literally says, a woman just arisen from the sea. A seal is embracing her. And it's an emergence of new forms of the potentiality of consciousness. Dane Rudyard has a lot to say about it, and I'm not going to read all of it, but you can Google Sabian symbol, Dane Rudyard, and then you'll find his website and you can look at it. And the keywords are there's an impulse to be with the first degree of Aries. So we've got that happening this year. Now, the other thing I mentioned I was going to just give a little teaching on is the gates of love. So the gates of the vessel of love in human design. I don't do human design. I study it for myself because I find it fun. The four gates of the vessel of love, 10, 15, 46, 25, correspond to the solstice and the equinox points. So we've got 10 is the winter solstice from the northern hemisphere, 15 is summer, 46 is fall, and 25 is spring. And they each correspond to different kinds of love. So we've got universal love at the spring point and love of humanity at the summer point. We have love of the body at the fall point, and we have love of life, or also love of the self is one of the ways it's looked at the winter solstice point. So winter, fall and winter, which are in the falling into the dark half plus the dark of the sun, are the body and self. They're more mundane. It's like, I love my body, I love myself. Whereas spring and summer are more of this universal, I love the divine, I love the universe, I love humanity. And we have 3 of these gates being activated this year because we are going to have Saturn and Neptune move into gate, or Neptune's been in gate 25. Saturn's going to join, and then they're going to cross over that Aries point. We're going to have Jupiter move into Cancer, and it's going to activate the 15th gate. And then we have the South Node at the 46th gate. The only one that's missing is the 10th, the winter solstice. So having these gates of the vessel of love activated, for me, what I feel is like, wow, what a powerful time for really working on being an embodiment of love, being the grail, becoming the vessel, which is part of the inspiration for the course that I'm going to teach. But it's not just this. I mean, there's just so many things like Neptune on the North Node and Venus conjunct Neptune on the North Node 3 times because she's retrograde. And when we get further, you'll see Uranus and Neptune will be aspecting each other. And then we have the Hermit year, and we have the snake, you know, the wood snake. There's just like so many different ways of pointing to spirituality, opening your heart, compassion, and love being like really important medicinal qualities to be carrying with you this year. Now, this isn't to say that intense things won't happen. Actually, they probably will. These are going to be the things that help you get through it. These are going to be the things that help you transform the lower vibration experience of whatever that is. I'm going to share with you a dream I had years ago because it's really evocative of what I mean by this. So I had this dream. It'll be short. I have this dream, I'm in my house. There's a door, but there's actually no door in it. It's just like wide open, which was symbolic of my lack of boundaries. Anyhow, there's a personal interpretation for this dream, and then there's an archetypal one. I'm sharing it because of the archetypal. So all of a sudden, this rabid dog comes in the house, red eyes, looks evil, foaming at the mouth, like scary, scary looking dog. And I go, oh my God. And I think to myself, I have to kill it. And then my higher self says to me, you have to take the evil out of the dog without killing it. So then I activated my heart chakra and I beamed love at this dog, and it transformed. Like the evil melted away. It transformed into a puppy. And then it was all like full of love and happy and whatever. And then, at the end of the dream, I just bowed to it and I said, thank you. And it obviously came to teach me a lesson. And then I said, you need to go now, because I was setting my boundary. So the dog turned around to walk away, but just as it was crossing over the threshold, it turned around and it winked at me. And then I woke up. So I've had a few dreams where I get winked at, and I always know it's like, okay, you're being schooled, kid. And so this dream to me is what I think is the medicine for this year. Is like, when you're in the face of evil, no, you don't kill it. You need to transform the evil with love. And I don't mean this in a spiritual bypassy way. So I don't mean don't have boundaries and just let people walk all over you or do stupid things. No, I would never say that. But there is something incredibly powerful and transformative about the frequency of love. And when you fully activate it, it can transform everything around you. And when enough people choose to activate it, it can actually affect the world. And I think that is important in this year that we're moving into.
But I think that ties to that North Node Neptune conjunction in the New Year's Day chart. The journey of Neptune, all these planetary energies have, as you teach in one of your classes about the shadow, they have that shadow side as well as the other side of it. And when you look at Neptune, Neptune involves pain. It can involve suffering. It can involve confusion. And
Yeah.
the important point about that is, though, is it's often, not often, it's frequently uh, that journey that leads us to that higher understanding, to that blissful moment, to that expansive oneness that that is the reward of Neptune. And so, with the North Node being conjuncted by Neptune and being um, part of that tension of releasing some past and moving towards that, I think it does speak to, all these things I mentioned at the beginning are very integrated.
Yeah.
They're all kind of pointing in the same direction, including the symbol of climbing the mountain to some shrine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a very Neptunian image. So
Yeah.
I find this very interesting that even this is showing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. All the different mystical oracular things, if they're tapping into truth, they will be evoking, similar things. And I always love it, because then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there's a level of guidance, there's a level of flow and following the universe. And that's also very appropriate for Neptune on the North Node, knowing when to surrender, knowing when to flow, knowing when to allow, not thinking we just have to do, go, but allowing that receptivity, which is also, by the way, part of becoming the Grail, because when the Grail receives the water, if it's a literal cup, but receives the inspiration from the universe. But we have to be receptive and open. If we're full of what we already think we know, there's nothing left, there's no room for the universe to pour into us. So anyhow, so the karmic completion degree is the other side of that Aries, first degree of Aries. Well, right before it is the karmic completion degree, and we have so many activations of 29 Pisces this year. So the North Node, of course, moves into 29 Pisces, January 29th, the mean node. Saturn conjunct Ceres at 29. Ceres is the great mother asteroid goddess at 29 Pisces, May 13th. Saturn will go back into Pisces September 1st after having gone into Aries for a bit. Neptune will go back into Pisces October 22nd. Uranus at 29 Taurus will sextile Neptune at 29 Pisces. This is the second Uranus-Neptune sextile, and I have a slide on that, so we'll talk about that more later. But November 20th, and then Neptune actually stations direct at 29 Pisces, December 10th. And to be clear, Neptune at 29 Pisces has been a signature this past year, 2024, because July 2nd, when Neptune stationed retrograde, it was at 29:55 Pisces. And then at the end of this year, Neptune will station direct at 29:22 Pisces. So the last degree of any sign is called the anaretic degree. I call it the karmic completion degree because there's something that we're wrapping up from that journey through that sign, however quick or long it was. Saturn will take 2.5 years to move through a sign. The sun, 30 days. Uranus 7 years and more as you go out. So it depends, but when you're at the last degree, something's being wrapped up and completed, with the exception of the North Node, because the North Node moves backwards. So North Node at 29 Pisces is the beginning of North Node's journey. But the rest of them all move forward. And so here's what Dane Rudyard has to say, the Sabian symbol. A majestic rock formation resembling a face is idealized by a boy who takes it as his ideal of greatness, and as he grows up, begins to look like it. The power of clearly visualized ideals to mold the life of the visualizer. So this is about archetypalization. Like, this is actually one of the reasons you work with divinities. So, if whatever divine being you're into, Sophia, the goddess, or Jesus, or Ptah, an Egyptian myth, whatever god or goddess you're drawn to, working with a deity allows you to look into the face of the divine and bring that into yourself. Like, we see ourselves in them, they see themselves in us, as above, so below, as without, so within. And we become the divine that we seek. That's a key piece in the spiritual journey. Like, we don't want the arc of our spiritual journey to always be about chasing after something. Ultimately, it is the Ouroboros where it comes back in and we find it in ourselves. All the external journeys were really just trying to get us to go inside. You could go to the farthest country and then come back home and still be the exact same person if you don't open up to something changing inside of you. And yes, sacred site journeys, I think, can be incredibly profound, but you are a sacred site. And we're often busy like trying to go everywhere and do, when we're like forgetting who we actually are and what we are being called to be in our essence. Not called to be in the sense that we aren't already, I guess more like remember what we are already. And so to me, that is really important this year. Also, just 29 Pisces means there's some big completion cycle happening this year. And obviously, we see that already in the fact that Saturn and Neptune will be conjunct next year. So we're ending a 36-year cycle, but we're also ending Neptune moving through all of the signs. And, that's a much greater cycle of like 100 and some odd years. I should have looked that up. I don't want to give a wrong. Do you know that off the top of your head, how many years Neptune moves through all the signs? I never have the data memorized. I have to put it down or I'll forget.
Yeah, I've got it on one of my slides. I'd actually have to.
Yeah. I
But I
think
did
it's like
want
130. I don't know. I don't
all
want
the
to say
signs,
something
yeah.
wrong.
I did want to comment again, going back to this concept of the North Node and Neptune being there. In
Mhm.
that New Year's Day chart, it's in the sixth house,
Mm.
which I find very interesting because the sixth house is the Virgo house in the
Mhm.
natural zodiac. And and also it relates to health. And so one of the things I thought about as I looked at this is the fact that, you know, having a connection to spirit and being in that higher place also ties back to how how are we being good stewards to ourselves? How are we tending to our health? And with the North Node being there, and you think about the buzz that's going on in the world right now, and particularly in our country, about the health issues that we're suffering, and it's being highlighted every day. If you're paying attention, we're talking about food dyes, we're talking about different oils, we're talking about things that many of us have just kind of ignored and taken for granted, which is kind of the South Node. We've just been living in that 12th house of maybe deception and not, and the hidden and not being aware of it. And the sixth house, I think, is calling us with the North Node there to really address this because there's a deep connection between taking care of this and connecting to spirit. Um,
Well,
and I,
yeah.
I
Oh, go
think
ahead.
that's there.
I personally think that the healthier you are, the more spirit can come through the clarity of the vehicle. Like some of my most profound spiritual moments have been on juice cleanses, on, when I've like really detoxed and released stuff, and it's like amazing, actually, how clear my mind is, how present in my body I am. I'm really tuned into, I mean, an alternative life path for me. I wanted to be a naturopath and go to Bastille, and I studied nutrition. I was really into all of that kind of stuff. And there's toxins in our air, our water, our food. Anybody who eats out and does takeout a lot, when they put hot food in your plastic container, the plastic leaches into the food and you're eating microplastics, and microplastics are inflammatory to the gut. And there's certain oils that are inflammatory that most people use to cook because they're cheaper, and especially restaurants will usually choose them because they're much cheaper than like olive oil or coconut oil. I mean, we could do a whole just webinar just on health, talking about health, but I agree with you that, and also in the United States chart, we have Uranus on the descendant, but in the sixth, and we're heading to our Uranus return.
Yeah.
And I do think the health of the people is a very important conversation. So thank you for tying that in and bringing awareness to that. So Chiron will be conjunct Eris twice this year, one more next year, May 27th, October 8th. Jupiter will trigger both of them throughout the year. And Chiron's a wounded healer. Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos. She's also an activist and a warrior. Like, she pulls back the veil and she shows you the shadow that nobody wants to look at. She's fierce. She's a very intense medicine, not sweet. It's like spicy and sour and not what you want to take, but it is what can help heal because she's bringing up the stuff that nobody wants to look at. So put these two together, and there's definitely a lot of potential this year for healing, but also triggering of anger and rage, of ego and will. She can help us take a stand for truth, for our own healing. There can be stuff around the old masculine war god archetype and what's toxic about it that needs to be seen, named, and released, especially in Aries. It's a really great time for shadow work with anger and rage, having healthy practices so you don't stuff and deny, but also don't like just explode in it unconsciously. Just to find a place of response rather than reactivity is key. So that's a big one. Jupiter moves into Cancer. I'm excited about this one personally. I have Jupiter in Cancer, and I am a Cancer, so I'm gonna have Jupiter go over my sun, and then I get Jupiter return. So obviously there's a personal reason for being excited. But Jupiter moves into Cancer June 9th, and this is the sign of Jupiter's exaltation. It's one of the most blessed signs Jupiter can be in. And then Jupiter will align with Sirius, the spiritual son of our sun, August 13th, which is also the date that Pluto is aligned with Altair, if you recall from the Altair slide. So Jupiter, the planet of expansion and positivity, and the sign of the divine mother. Cancer is the sign of benevolence and kindness and caring and, compassion. It's very intuitive. It's very spiritual. psychic even. Jupiter is bringing light and expansion to these qualities, to these experiences. It can be, for anybody who's interested in it, a great year to be pregnant. I'm past that, but you know, Jupiter and Cancer, the womb and the mother, definitely more fertility kind of energies. And if that's not what you're interested in, and you've got a womb and you're still able to get pregnant, be careful. So Jupiter conjunct Sirius, this is an image of Dendera ceiling in Egypt. So there's these ceiling panels in the main hall, and that's the one on the left. And then there's the zodiac ceiling that's a circle that's in this one section of the temple that actually they removed the ceiling and it's at like the museum. I think it's in Egypt now. It used to be in the London Museum, but I think now that Egypt has their new big museum, they took it back, but I'm not sure. So actually, don't quote me on that. But in the one on the right, it's hard to see. I couldn't find a really good, clear image, but they position all the planets in the signs of their exaltation. And so here's Cancer the crab, and here is Jupiter, this little green dude. So Jupiter, Cancer. This star above this cow is Sirius. So there's an alignment actually in the ceiling of Dendera of Jupiter, Sirius, and Cancer. This over here is Sirius right here. This is Orion looking back at her. And so Sirius is seen as the star of Isis, but actually previous to that was Sopdet, a goddess in her own right. And then Osiris is conflated with Orion is conflated with Osiris, but previously was his own god, Sa. So Sa and Sopdet were the deities of Orion, and Sirius later then got associated with Osiris and Isis. And so Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and the degree of exaltation for Jupiter is 15 Cancer. And currently, Sirius moves slowly, as do all the stars, very slowly, 1 degree every 72 years. Currently, Sirius is at 1425, about to move into 1426, which you round up to 15. So Sirius is at the position of the degree of exaltation of Jupiter, and we see on the Dendera ceiling that there's an alignment of Sirius, Jupiter, and Cancer. And so in the next 40 years, we're actually having Sirius move ever so closer to the precise 15-degree point, and the Jupiter's exaltation point that will be exact in 2065. And if you know your world chart of existence or creation of existence chart, it's called the Anima Mundi chart. It's supposed to be the chart when the world was first created. Well, in that chart, the rising is 15 degrees Cancer with the moon at 15 Cancer. So there's something magical about 15 Cancer. And we're about to have Jupiter transit over that degree, conjunct Sirius this summer. And I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal spiritually and mystically. And as you can see, there's actually an arc that has a high energy of spirituality and mysticism throughout the astrology this year, but also an arc of how do you take those etheric, transcendent, energies, visions, ideals, dreams, and then how do you bring them into form? That would be the first degree of Aries activation. It's that point of coming out of the primordial waters of creation into existence, into physical form, into activation, the impulse to be, as Dane Rudyard states. Do you have anything you want to add to Jupiter and Cancer?
No, I'm acting as the monitor in the back. I'm just give you the 15 minutes heads up. We're trying to
Oh,
shoot
yeah.
hours.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I can't remember how many slides I have, but we are actually almost at the end. So yeah, I'm excited about, we're Uranus into Gemini, and I think I have one more slide and then we're done with the teaching. And then I just have a few other slides with some offers and the free gift, and then we go into Q&A. So hey, we're good on time. So excited. All right.
This
So
is a biggie, by the way.
this is a biggie. So we might spend 30 minutes on this one now. So Uranus moves into Gemini July 7th. And it's really notable to notice that this last 2 years, we've had Pluto moving into Aquarius. This coming year, we're now going to have Neptune into Aries and Uranus into Gemini. They both are going to go back and forth, though, this year into next year. So we have all three outer planets shifting into new signs. The outer planets move very slow. They last longer, like 7 years for Uranus in a sign. Neptune, it has a bit of an erratic orbit, so it can range like 12, 13, 14, I think up to 15. Pluto is also a very erratic orbit, so his time in Aquarius, I think, is 19 or 20 years, but he was in Capricorn for 16 years. So you can't, it's not clockwork with the erratic orbit planets. You have to track it. But to have these outer planets that have to do with transpersonal energy. So the personal planets, Sun through Mars, they're about our personal selves, our identity, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, our desires, Sun through Mars. Jupiter and Saturn are the teacher planets. They're the social planets. Jupiter moves into a new sign every year, Saturn every 2.5 years. So they're about like the social energy of a couple years. But Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they're about larger arcs of time in consciousness and in humanity. And they can really bring in consciousness shifts. And especially Uranus, because, well, actually all three, but in this slide, Uranus is the higher mind. And he has to do in his highest with wisdom and insight and bolt out of the blue awarenesses. Like all of a sudden, the light bulb goes on in your head, and you're like, oh, I realized something. That's very Uranian. And Uranus is actually also connected to technology, AI, community, humanity. Gemini is the first of the air signs, and Gemini is the lower mind sign. It's one of the Mercury world signs. Mercury is the lower mind, not lower like bad, just like more personal, human mind, my thoughts, my understanding. Uranus is the higher mind when we've activated it. And so Uranus is moving into the sign of the lower mind. And at best, this can be amazing for coming back to beginner's mind, because that's actually the medicine of Gemini. Gemini, when you look at the arc of the signs, Aries through Pisces, Gemini correlates with early childhood education, like when you're learning how to read and write and learning words and learning to speak, that type of stuff in those early years of education. And children, they're totally beginner's mind little beings. They're like, ooh, I'm learning something new. Ooh, that's interesting. And they're just like open, right? And so that's the gift of Gemini, is the openness, that receptivity to learning new things. And at best with Uranus and Gemini, we can be open to learning new things, be open to discovering new truths, even if they shock our socks off, even if they confront what we thought was true, and magically we're going to see behind the curtain and see what's going on. The shadow, though, of Uranus and Gemini can be high intelligence people using tech, media, and AI to manipulate consciousness. We could have a revolution of the common people, revolution Uranus, common people Gemini, opening our minds, seeing the truth. I also was playing with a new form of education, Uranus, for children, Gemini, but maybe the children just rebel and we're forced to find a new form of education because they refuse to do the traditional one. There could be new means of transportation. Gemini governs transportation, and especially local. And we also have to keep in mind Uranus is about to head to natal Uranus in the United States in a few years. So we're about to have our Uranus return. Do you want to chime in?
Just anecdotally, I would say don't be surprised if sometime during this journey of Uranus through Gemini, we find ourselves riding around in air taxis.
Yeah.
Kind of Jetson-like. It's that kind of energy.
Wow. Like, and the funny thing is, Uranus and Gemini is not like a 30-year transit. Like if you were to say in the next 30 years,
No.
But it's like, this is 7 years. But
Yep.
that's the thing with technology, is it kind of snowballs. It's like, oh, first you have your first computer, now we have a cell phone, now we have, and then boom, it's like just takes over like wildfire, the capacity for new things to come forward. The problem with that is, if you know your Atlantis myth, the fall of Atlantis occurred, they say, because the technology evolved too quickly and outrun the moral capacity of the people and the spiritual awareness. Maybe not of all the people, but of the collective consciousness. I do think that there were, people there that were trying to reroute the ship before it hit the iceberg. But on a collective level, everyone was not there yet, or enough of everyone, the tipping point, So we do need to watch out for the sudden and very fast pushing forward of new technologies that we haven't thought through, that we haven't tested out, or that we haven't, really wondered. Like, for example, in pharmaceuticals, like drugs, for example, they'll have these studies, and there's things to question about some of the studies because they're funded by the people who own the drug companies, but let's just not talk about that right now. There's a drug, and maybe you have a 20-year study or a 50-year study, and you can really see, what is the impact of this, what potentially can happen. The problem with technology when we push it out too quickly is we don't have any time to figure out what could happen when we open Pandora's box. And maybe we won't be able to put it back in. And we do need to have that kind of foresight, forethought, wisdom, awareness. We need more people who think like that in these spaces.
And I think just to add, the other thing that I think makes this super potent is the fact that you've got Pluto in Aquarius.
Yeah.
And Aquarius is ruled by Uranus.
Yep.
It's the modern day ruler. And when you look at those two energies together, the transformative, basically blow something up and rebuild it kind of energy of Pluto with this Uranian inventive, let's step off the sidewalk, let's do something different energy. And you put these two things together, I mean, it really could be quite dramatic what we see.
Yeah. And next year we will have Uranus trine Pluto, which is
Exactly.
the next part of the storyline from the Uranus-Pluto squares that were 2013, 14, and 15. And anybody who's the Uranus-Pluto generation, which was in the 60s, when you had Uranus conjunct Pluto in Virgo, that was the seeding point of the Uranus-Pluto cycle we're in. And now we're heading into the opening trine. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's interesting because we're doing the 2025 astrology, but I was like already taking notes for what do I need to talk about for 2026, because there's so much that's literally just setting the stage for 2026 this year, for next year.
Absolutely.
The last thing I want to mention is Uranus will sextile Neptune. So the first one is August 28th. And that is with Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries. But the second one, November 20th, which I had on the 29th degree slide, that one will be when Uranus is back in 29 Taurus and Neptune is back in 29 Pisces. And then there'll be one more. Now, what's amazing about this, it is a minor aspect sextile. It's harmonious. There's a linking up of the higher mind, Uranus, and the higher heart, Neptune. They're both very visionary, intuitive. Neptune tends to be more intuitive in an emotional, embodied psychic way, because it's a watery kind of intuition. Uranus has intuition as well, but it tends to be more like insight, like it just comes in, it doesn't necessarily have a felt sense in the body or in the emotional body, but they both have this capacity to see it, what's beyond, whether that's the future trajectory, which is, very Uranian, or just like the whole cosmic, womb or heart of the universe, which would be more maybe Neptunian. And then the two linked together It's an amazing, it can be very profound spiritually. It's another thing we can add to the list of spiritual transits this year. And it can be a very profound time to open to the transpersonal realms, again, allowing the higher mind to lead us, not our personal egoic mind, allowing the higher heart to lead us, not our personal desire body and personal heart, allowing the higher will to take action, not our lower will ego self, like surrendering the small self to the higher self so that the higher can lead. The small self will do the action taking, because that's us and our bodies and our beings. And, it's how we make things happen. But to be informed by something that's greater than ourselves, which is, again, just that whole arc of the Pisces energy this year, of Neptune on the North Node, of Jupiter aligning with Sirius. And then you can add Uranus, Neptune to the mix. I think Saturn and Neptune both sextile Uranus because they hover with each other. So Saturn began that with Uranus last year or 2024, but we have two more this year, April 4th, August 11th, and then Uranus the second half of the year. And there'll be one more Uranus Neptune sextile next year. So really, I'm just struck by how spiritual the year can be. But I also want to remind you that a lot of times I've seen this happen in the world where it's like hearts open because tragedy happened. I really feel like humans need to, as a collective, evolve to a place where we choose to open our hearts and we don't need tragedy to get there. And I think a lot of people, especially if you're here and you're spiritual and interested in astrology, you're already there, right? But more people need to get on board with that. And so the spiritual energy of this year is very profound. And some of that may come through some other intense things, as we saw in the mundane chart. And there is this opportunity to, the way I like to conceive of it is like the DNA spiral, right? When you think of the Ouroboros, you think, oh, the snake, he just eats his tail and goes in the same plane, circling over and over. Well, not really, actually. The snake can go on a higher frequency or a higher plane or level, can also go down and go lower. It's still circling around like a DNA spiral. But it's got movement to it. It's not just two-dimensional. And so I think like the spiritual gifts of this year are there for the taking. And no matter what is going on in the mundane world, we can have it help us go higher and take things to a higher frequency in ourselves, and our own lives and what we're dealing with and moving through, but also to contribute that to the collective, because humanity is on this journey of ascension, if you will. I don't always like to use that word because it implies like we're going off the planet, going somewhere. And I think that the journey is descension as much as it is ascension. I think spirit needs to come fully into the body and we need to ground and anchor that. And we also are rising up simultaneously. So it's sort of like both and. But like the potential inherent in this year is really, really quite powerful. I mean, I think it's going to be a potent year. And then choosing to do the work to take these higher mind, higher heart energies, compassion, inspiration, whatever, but then grounding it, bringing it into manifestation, doing something with it. That's that Aries point activation. That's Saturn approaching Neptune. That's how do you bring it into the world? Don't just leave it in the realm of possibility, but bring it into manifestation. So obviously that'll carry into next year because the actual conjunction of Saturn and Neptune are next year. Do you have any final things to say, Randy, on this? I can't remember what's next.
No,
Oh, yeah.
no, I think you did a great job of summing that up.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that you've been I've had fun with you, like going back and forth, and
Sure.
might be seeing more of us sharing together in the new year. So I just have a few slides. So the Holy Grail class, Becoming the Vessel, will be in February. I don't have the landing page up, and I can say Venus retrograde and Neptune on the North Node and all these things, these mystical things are definitely tied into it. They'll be, working with some astrology, working with somatic practices, the grails in the body, dream work, community connection. If you are interested in it, I will have more info going out on my newsletter. And when I'm done going through these slides, I will copy and paste the links that I mentioned in the next couple slides in the chat. And then I'll put them under the body of the video too. I have horoscopes up. So 2025 horoscopes look at the major things, the North Node, Pisces conjunctions, Saturn, Neptune into Aries, Jupiter into Cancer, Uranus into Gemini, I think also Chiron, Aries. I also have lunar horoscopes up, weekly horoscopes. I'll put a link in the chat. You can sign up for my membership and get access to horoscopes. My website's Divine Harmony, bringing heaven down to earth, the Descension arc. And then the free gift for you guys is actually a free gift to my Sirius Masterclass. Sirius is so powerful this year. I'm so excited. And I have a 2+ hour, I think it might be 2.5 hours, I can't remember, class, and I'm giving you a link for the free class. And I will have to do that in a second because I can't navigate between YouTube and this easily at the moment. I also have just through January 8th discounts on all my other master classes and courses. So 50% off any master class, 20% off courses, things I mentioned throughout this, embodied astrology, Stargate, other things, whatever. You can check it out. I'll put links. Those are the codes. New Year 50 for 50% off, New Year 20 for 20% off. Coupon code expires end of day January 8th. And the free gift link will also expire end of day January 8th. Oh, and I am offering a very limited amount of astrology readings, like literally 13, and they'll be done between January 15th and February 15th. And I will have a link to that. They probably will go pretty quickly because the last time I did this, they did. I haven't done readings regularly for I think almost 3 years. I've had a couple periods where I've done them just for people in classes and I haven't announced it publicly. So it's because I've been focusing on teaching. I just love to teach and I have more new classes I want to teach than I have time to teach. So I've just been focusing on that. But I also love to do readings, so there'll be some. My newsletter list link will be below. And then Randy's website is the Cleveland Shaman. And I am going to put all of this info, hold on, Randy website, the Cleveland Shaman. Okay, so I'm going to put all of this in the chat, and now we're going to Q&A. So anybody who has, okay, tell me if you can see that. Oh, shoot, it won't go. It's saying it's too much. Darn it. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this a few things at a time, and then I will also just put everything below. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have to, oh, good God. You know what? So if anybody has any questions, let me start by saying this. Questions have to be related to what we talked about today. So it can't be other things. And then it can't be personal chart related because really anybody who is wanting to give you any kind of chart reading needs to look at your chart. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and post all these links simultaneously. Oops. So if anybody has questions after I post all of these links, the video content, I was going to post links to like my Pluto and Aquarius talk, my As Above, So Below, Why We Need New Myths to Save Humanity talk, the Evolution of Astrology talk, Solar and Lunar Standstills, the Pleiades and the Divine Feminine. You can just find all of that on my YouTube channel. Okay. Let's just, because I can't, it's making me only post links like one at a time, and it's really a lot. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm almost done. Here's Randy's website, and then I'm going to look at questions. Can you see the chat, Randy? Do you have YouTube open or no? All right.
No, I don't see the chat, but that's okay. You can convey it if there's a.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. And it's just you and I. Now everybody should be able to see us better. I mean, bigger and better. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So I think I just need to refresh YouTube because YouTube just shows everything. Ah, there we go. My cheeks get red when I'm like the sun is shining at me. Anyhow, whatever. So if you have questions, please put it in the chat now because I might be able to scroll through and see if there were any. There's a lot of thank yous. This was awesome. Thank you. So informative. Um, so, uh, so the nodes go backwards. So Aries point is the end, Pisces the beginning. Does this imply a new nodal fated spiritual beginning, a new cycle? Yes, it starts a new 19-year cycle, and it is connected to the major lunar standstill. So the major lunar standstill correlates with the north node when it's at 0 Aries and the south node 0 Libra. And the nodes themselves change end of January. The exact out of bounds moon is a couple months later because the moon needs to be out of bounds in Capricorn or Cancer. And then that moon is actually squaring the sun at the spring equinox. So it does speak to a new 19-year cycle that is activated by the major lunar standstill cycle as well. There's a lot of thank yous and comments. I don't even know how to save all this live chat. Last time this happened, there was all this chat and then it just disappeared and I couldn't even read through it. So I don't know why. Does anybody know how I can save the chat? Because I like to read through what people say. Question for both. Given all this year's transits, do you feel life will feel like a whirlwind? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I chose to entitle my presentation A Mountain Pilgrimage, because it does feel like, I mean, just think of the term pilgrim. It's not an easy quest. Talking about getting on a boat, going across an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Times you're probably filled with doubt. You're probably, fearful of the journey. But in the end, in that same symbol, there was a mountain shrine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a destination. And so yes, I do, I always, when I do a reading for someone, I'm not exactly a candy coater. I'm pretty honest with people, and I think I should be. I think that's an important part of astrology.
Yep.
This could be a tumultuous time, but the astrology is saying that there's a deep purpose to it, and it's very transformative in nature. So I would just say, get in a community, get involved, have people that you can work with that are going to be supportive of you. That's the Aquarian energy coming in, and realize that no matter what comes, whether that's, I saw that there is a potential, one delineation is an epidemic, another delineation is some kind of violence. These things are not new. And as Harmony said, I wish we didn't have to experience them. And I hope one day that we transcend above that. And maybe this is that time where we finally learn to move away from this. But there may be some challenges, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think this year is really important to make sure you're doing really good work with your emotions because the emotions will be up with the deluge of Pisces and 29 Pisces and all the feels, the unconscious and the personal, the collective unconscious and the personal unconscious stuff that we've repressed, denied can come up, so having really good, be in therapy, be doing somatic work or shadow work. I have a class that supports that. It's called Astrology in Your Shadow, but there's other ways to do shadow work. You know, so that as things are arising, you're working with what's arising. You're not stuffing it, denying it, you know, trying to find something to escape from it. I do think it's also a really important year to really be willing to question what you think and what you think you know and where you think you're right. You know, even just the recent political situation, the presidential election here in the United States, I always keep my spaces neutral politically, because I feel that healing and awakening needs to be accessible to everyone. And if we start arguing about politics, it will immediately shut people down, turn people off, or make people feel marginalized. So I don't like to have any political arguments in my classes, in my spaces. But what I want to say is that it was very interesting as a witness, this presidential election, to really hear from people on all sides, predominantly two sides, but all sides, and they all thought they were right. And they all thought that their candidate was the one that would help save the world, and the other one was evil, bad, gonna destroy America. Everybody thinks they're right. Of course they do, otherwise they wouldn't believe it, right? I mean, do you really believe in something that you don't really believe in? Do you, like, no. And so I think it's really important for each of us to be willing to question where we think we know it all, where we think we're right. In that mundane chart for January 1st, we had Mercury and Jupiter mutual reception, and you had that on your slide. That was with the ancient rulers, traditional rulers. If you looked at contemporary rulers, Neptune was in rulership, and there was another mutual reception between Venus and Uranus. But in the contemporary rulers, Mercury in Sag in the sign of Jupiter, and Jupiter in Gemini in the sign of Mercury, they're both in detriment. They're both in signs that are opposite of the sign they rule. And so the problem with that is Jupiter, who wants to have wide angle vision, when he's in Gemini, can be myopic. He can only see, you know, what he wants to see. And Mercury, the personal mind in Sag, thinks he knows it all. Hubris, self-righteousness. I'm right, you're wrong. You need to listen. And so one of the mantras I like to say to myself, but also share when I teach, is be more committed to the truth than you are to being right. Because if that's the commitment you have, is to truth, then you're willing to learn things that are going to challenge what you think you know. But if you're more committed to being right, then you're going to be closed off from seeing anything like a horse with blinders or hearing anything that's outside of your worldview. And that is not going to serve, not personally, not collectively. We all need to find bridges back to each other. We do not need to keep polarizing and fighting and arguing and saying one is evil and the other is the one that's going to save the world. Like, we actually need to wake up as a humanity. And then even in my own country, I think my country and the people need to wake up and really understand their power, not just in their vote, but in their dollars and in, you know, what they choose to digest in forms of media and information and all kinds of things. So I do think that both of those, really working with your emotions in a deep way, you know, really working with emotional intimacy, and then working with your mind in its capacity to be open to learning new things and seeing new truths that may even challenge the narrative you've been living your life by, or that you've been told you should live your life by, will be the medicine for anything that might feel like a whirlwind this year. You know, keep in mind too, whirlwinds come in to clear things out. Like, that's the energetic of a whirlwind, is it like whips things up, and same with a giant sea wave, a tsunami, you know, it'll take out to the ocean whatever needs to go, and what remains is still left standing. And it's kind of like that children's story of the pigs, you know, in the houses, the straw house and the whatever house, and then the brick house. stick, straw, stick, brick. And it's only the pig with the brick house where it doesn't get blown, you know, blown over, but the other ones do. So it's like, okay, where within yourself do you have foundations of straw or sticks, or walls, you know, with straws and sticks? And you need bricks, you need grounding. And I personally find the most grounding comes when I'm doing my embodiment practices, my spiritual work that's grounded, not spiritual work that makes me float out of my body. And emotions, you know, emotions and the body are water and earth. They're the two feminine elements. And everybody, a lot of people, especially in the spiritual world, are very into the divine feminine, and the divine feminine needs to return. Well, the divine feminine returns in each of us when we honor our emotions and we honor our body. And health is very much tied into body, as Randy was talking about in the New Year's Day chart. Taking care of our health, eating well, sleeping well, you know, getting movement and exercise, being aware of the things in our environment that take down our health. It's not always, you know, toxins in the air, water, and the food. Sometimes it's toxic people, toxic thoughts, toxic beliefs. So anyhow, so yeah, my cheeks are red. You know what it is the sun is coming right in here. And then I think I get passionate when I talk or something. My cheeks always turn red at the end of teaching. So, um,
So Harmony, can I add something to that?
yes, definitely.
So it's interesting to kind of sum this up that Sagittarius, Mercury is the lead planet in that New Year's Day chart. And the symbol, the Sabian symbol,
Oh, yes.
just to remind everybody, is a child and a dog wearing borrowed glasses. And basically, what the underlying commentary says is that we should use the imagination and make believe in anticipating higher states of development. And basically, you know, what I'm getting from that is, you know, it's the fake it till you make it, imitating. And kind of what you were saying along those same lines is, look, um, you may think you know,
Mm.
but if you can just humor all the rest of us for a while and say, I don't, and this includes myself, and be open to the fact that you may have to put some glasses on that don't
Mhm.
quite fit. They look a little goofy for a while, but at some point you're going to grow into those and you're going to see the full picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's insightful. Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat people asking us about the fog. So, well, there's two things that have happened today and in the couple days leading up to this. So, Randy and I had chats about the fog because the fog was happening when we were preparing our talk together. And then this morning, I woke up to the news of the person driving through and shooting people in New Orleans and New Year's Eve celebration. Actually, I couldn't find the time. I was like, what time did that happen? And but I had too much to do to get ready for this, so I had to side table it. But I do feel in that New Orleans thing that happened, I feel that Moon Pluto opposite Mars on the first day of the new year. The fog is all very Neptune, Saturn, and Pisces. You know, I mean, here's the deal. There's positive sides and shadow sides, light and shadow to everything, right? So Neptune and Pisces can be like, I mean, I have Pisces rising, Pisces moon, and Neptune on the midheaven. So I can tell you what Neptune energy feels like. I can feel the divine at times. Like I can feel such states of bliss that I feel like I'm on drugs, but I'm not, you know, and music can carry me into these mystical places. And all I have to do is go and meditate and ground and connect to the stars and connect to the earth. And it's like the amount of bliss I'll start feeling through my body is phenomenal. This is very Pisces. My dreams are off the charts. Like the inspiration that comes in is a deluge. It's not like a little bit of water. It's like I feel like I'm sometimes underneath a giant waterfall. But the shadow of Pisces and Neptune and 29 Pisces is being so in spirit world that we're not really paying attention to what's happening. And, you know, out to lunch, spiritual bypassing, checking out, escaping, addictive, yada, yada. So I went on Twitter, or X it's called now, but I keep forgetting to change the name in my head. And I saw a lot of people talking about the fog. And it was like all over the map, and it was everywhere too, to be clear. It was Florida and Texas and California and Ohio and different parts though, because it was on North Carolina and the coast, but it didn't happen here where I live. So it's like not the whole state of all these places. It was also in London, whatever. So it was all over the place. And there were different ideas of it. Like people had videos of it looking like it was chunks of snow, but they said it's like 80 degrees here. It's not snow. And it had like texture to it. But then there's people showing pictures of just actual, like what looks like normal fog. I don't know. There were some people were saying it had a smell to it and it made them feel sick and they got a sore throat after being outside in it. Other people are saying I was out in it for 8 hours. I didn't have any issues. So it's like kind of all over the map. And it's very Neptunian. It's like, what's happening? I don't quite know. I will say for me, for both the drones and this fog thing, I have just watched it. I haven't made any definitive judgment or idea about what I think is going on, because all I can sense is the swirly, confusing energy around it. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Jury's out. Like I'm just witnessing and watching. I will say with the drone situation, I was looking into the astrology behind that. So all the articles that I could find didn't give an exact date. They just all said mid-November. Mid-November, Saturn stationed in Pisces. And then a lot of the big articles have been around when there's big activations with Saturn and Pisces. So it feels like Saturn, the planet of get real, but also the planet of using to control. You know, Saturn in the karma of the father line that I talk about in some video, can't remember which one, but whatever. Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter are grandfather, father, son, and each of them get into this power dynamic as the parent with their child, and they try to control and suppress them, and then the child has to battle it out and take power from the father, and I call it karma, the father line. So Saturn, he didn't allow his children to be born, and he ate them. He ate some of them and was repressing essentially the new impulse that wanted to be born, the new generation. And so Saturn has a repression quality and a control quality and a karmic quality. And then Pisces is, you know, using things to manipulate. Like, you know, people who work with magic, they talk about glamours. People can give off glamours. A lot of celebrities do this actually, but you can also give off, you know, an energy of illusion or confusion. You can put things out there that make people go, I don't know what's happening. This is so confusing. But then people will jump to, oh, this is it or that is it. So with the drones, I remember I watched a bunch of videos and some people were like they were showing close-ups of a drone and it was dancing. And I was like, that's exactly what Sirius looks like when I video Sirius with my phone and I scroll in. And then I saw an astronomer go, that is a video of a star up close. I was like, okay, so that wasn't a drone. Then I saw these videos, and there are videos of legit drones. So I'm not saying everything was fake, but it was just, I had to kind of like separate what was real from what was unreal. And I spent so much time doing that. So there was this other video that was amplified by a big name person who had a big presence. They're like, look at this. And somebody's video was like, look in the east, there's a drone. Look in the west, there's a drone. And oh my God, it's Venus and Jupiter. And the planets were in the sky, and people were thinking they were drones. And they're like, it stays in the same place. It's there every night. And I was like, those are planets. And so at that point, I just gave up looking at it because there was just so much information all over the place that was like it felt like it was diluting whatever I was trying to do, which is also, by the way, Neptune Pisces is dissolution, dilution, adding water to water things out. So it was, I'm still in a place of curiosity. I see Christina, be curious, not judgmental. Yes. And so I don't quite know yet. I do know that my kid was in Florida with her friend, and I was worried because she went on a trip with her friend. And they saw it. They saw the fog, but they were in the house and whatever, and then it was gone. They haven't seen it again. But I was just like, if that fog returns, you stay inside the house. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. Is it real fog? Is there some environmental thing happening all over the place? Or is there some weather modification happening? Which one thing I'm really happy about this past year is more people are becoming aware of the fact that there is weather modification, and there has been. And chemtrails, people say are conspiracy theories. Well, let go of that word since it's so loaded and just Google cloud seeding and weather modification, and you can see scientific articles on this on PubMed and whatever. There are things that people are doing, our government's doing. So I'm not sure. I do have people commenting. Constance says, sorry, the sun is like in my face. Constance says, my brother in Florida said the cloud descended on his property last week. He's talked about it several times. He's a Pisces. He says it's a spiritual visitation. He said it softened up the hard cookies she sent for him for Christmas. And then somebody, so in Tula Garden, says Saturn square Jupiter, seeing who's behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. Exactly. KV says, when I lived in Pacifica, California over 45 years ago, foggy days are normal. Fog isn't just a mist like folks think. It does smell at times. It can have a taste. It will have a solid state. Yeah, you have to look at some of these videos of the fog. That's all I have to say. I don't know if you've seen them. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about the fog. Do you have anything to say about the fog?
I would just say try to be just an observer and not get too invested at the
Yeah,
moment,
yes,
because we are going to see. I feel, and I think the astrology is fairly supportive of this, some heightened deceptions, and I don't know whether this is one of those or not,
yeah.
but it certainly could be. So, just be an observer and don't get too emotionally invested, because it's not going to be clear for a while, I don't think at all.
Yeah. Well, Humbled Warrior said, I feel like the insertion of all the contrasting information is purposefully confusing. Sounds very Neptunian, Piscean. Great comment. So in Tula Gardens, sorry. So in Tula Gardens, I asked the question about the nodes. Is the nodal movement implying Pisces is the true reality of beginning, Aries the end? Well, I actually teach that in Stargate Mystery School. So it's only in the tropical system, tropical Western system, but actually Vedic too also changed to where Aries is the first sign, Pisces is the last. But actually anciently, whatever age we were in would be seen as the one that was leading. So at the end of the age of Aries, we fixed Aries as the first sign in the tropical zodiac, not almost, as a way to force and fix Aries, the god of war, as the leading sign. And so actually every sign takes its turn leading based on the age we're in. Technically, you could say right now in the age of Aquarius, Aquarius is the first sign. So, and to keep in mind, like the living sky, everything is constantly evolving and changing and shifting. So the thing with the way that astrology is done in tropical, but also Vedic, is they superimpose systems over a living sky organic thing that's in constant movement. No constellation is 30 degrees exactly for the sun to move through. For example, Virgo is like 45 or 46 days. Scorpio is like 8 or 9. So this idea that the sun is moving through Scorpio for, from October 22nd through November 19th is inaccurate. If you were to actually look in the living sky, first of all, it's not until the end of tropical Scorpio season that you'll even see the sun over by Scorpio. But then also, what the sun is really in living sky is Libra at the beginning of Scorpio, tropical Scorpio season. The reason for that is we fixed the way we do tropical astrology is it's seasonal based. So spring equinox corresponds with 0 Aries. But actually, the ages correlate to the spring equinox and what's rising before the sun on the spring equinox, and that is always changing. So we've created a system here on Earth that has usefulness, but also has a lot of limitation. And the whole class of Stargate Mystery School is teaching that. So I think that might be it in terms of questions. Gosh, it's getting really bright in here. I have to move. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who is here with us today. I will be all these links that I put in the comments, your free gift of Sirius, the limited readings, the coupons for the classes, newsletter sign up, Randy's website, membership sign up. I can't even remember what else I said. Oh, there were going to be links for various other talks, and I'll put those below. Once we sign off, I'll go in and edit this video and add them into the description. And I have absolutely no idea why that other one that we set up, that we checked yesterday and did a test with, and it worked, didn't work today. And I apologize for anybody who missed some of the talk because of that. And I think that's it. Do you have any final things to say?
Just Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a beautiful start to a new year. And may we all call in whatever will unfold this year for us personally and collectively, call it in with grace and ease. May the Divine Mother surround, bless, and protect us as we navigate this new year, full of highs and lows, gifts and lessons, so that we can find our center amidst it all. The center of the wheel, the center of the yin and yang, the center of our experience. So may it be. Blessed be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Randy. Thank you, everybody. Sending love, and be interesting to see the year unfold.